Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this webinar with K-12 Insight and Chesapeake Public Schools. We're very excited to have you all here with us. I want to start with a few logistics very quickly. We will have the chat open for your questions and comments. We'll also have the Q&A section open, so please feel welcome to add any comments you have throughout the webinar to those locations. We'll be watching for them, and we will be happy to respond to them in real time. So today we're going to be joined by Dr. Chris Vail, the Director of Communications at Chesapeake Public Schools, and also Joe Douglas, a Regional Account Director for us here at K-12 Insight. We're going to be focusing today on building trust through communications and what that looks like for different school districts, especially Chesapeake Public Schools in Virginia. So with that, I will hand it over to Joe, and we'll begin talking about inbound and outbound communications from your school districts. So Joe, here we go.
I know, Dr. Vail, you have a handful of things that you send out, whether that's text messages, emails, robocalls, newsletters, or the other things that you send out as well to your stakeholders in the community?
Well, also through the schools too. We do our district level parent communication. We do a weekly update with them. We use Dr. Cotton, our superintendent, his clipboard, a blog to send out information, and then we do have parent alert system, school messenger. When we need to get out those important messages, and whether that's through text or voice, again, ways for us to get that information out.
Yes. So a lot of different options, and at whether district level, building level, you have processes and procedures on how to get communication out to the masses. The challenge that we see is there's not always a great way to turn that megaphone around and have a systematic a way for your community as a large to reach into the school system and then get it to the person that's actually closest to the problem to be able to solve the answer. A couple challenges when trying to turn that megaphone around. One is the sheer volume of communication that happens each and every day. For every 10,000 students, or for every 1,000 students from a scaling perspective, there's about 400 pieces of communication that comes in each day. So the sheer volume of communication at scale at district level is very, very high. The other challenge is that there's a lot of ways that your outbound communication goes out. There's a lot of way that inbound communication can come in, right? Text messages, emails, phone calls that could come into the office of the superintendent, different departments, the board, right? Public comment. All of these things are communication, but none of them necessarily, talk to each other. And there's not great data to understand what the pulse of the community is. Where this has started to impact districts, particularly over the last 2 years of the pandemic, is when we're listening, oftentimes, and Dr. Vail, you said this, you're listening to the loudest voices, right? We know that the more neutral we are on any given topic, the more people agree with us, and the more polarizing you get, the fewer people agree with this. And this would be a normal Bell distribution graph, right, for most of the country. However, your worlds tend to look like this, right? We're constantly hearing from some of the entrenched opinions on the polar extremes, right? They're the ones that kind of taking the eye off the ball of what we're trying to do is educating kids. And having a systematic way to engage with those stakeholders, but then also hear from the people that we're not engaged with all the time. There's a waterfalling effect of a crisis. Everyone, familiar with something is not handled appropriately early on in communication. It can fall through the cracks, gather some steam, become a literal trending topic on social media. Now you have a full-blown crisis, right? And that crisis, though, however, came from earlier communication on that we just didn't handle appropriately, or we didn't see, or we didn't know about, right? And now we're having to spend more time, money, and energy in solving later down. So what we built at K-12 Insight in our partnership, and Dr. Vail mentioned this already, is a tool called Let's Talk. And that's the implementation we're going to be discussing today. And the idea is that we want to have and open up easy lines of communication for every different stakeholder that you have in your community. And regardless of the way in which they want to communicate with you, whether that's, again, text message, email, phone call, showing up for board comment, right? That all should get tracked, triaged, and measured, because the expectations and the era of K-12 landscape has changed, right? There are higher expectations coming out post-pandemic than there were coming into the pandemic. And so that's the system that we implemented with Chesapeake. We're going to get into the specifics now of what they do, but providing KPIs and real-time data to understand a little bit more of the anecdotal that you may know on a day-to-day basis. So with that, Dr. Vail, would you mind giving a little bit of background about Chesapeake Public Schools and the school division?
Sure. Chesapeake, we're located in Virginia in the Tidewater area. We are a large school district with over 40,000 students. We have 48 campuses. We just added our CVA, Chesapeake Virtual Academy for K-12, so that'd be our 48. We have over 6,000 employees. So again, very large school district with a lot of information going out, right? So we needed to figure out how we can streamline that information going out and that information coming in.
Awesome. So I want to just open up the discussion, since we had a little bit of background of what we do and the why that we do it, like what the story for Chesapeake. So I just wanted to open it about the district's communication, overall communication strategy. Can you tell us about the journey, of bringing in the Let's Talk system? Obviously, it layers on top of the pandemic hitting at the same time. But can you walk us through kind of the thought process of what you were originally trying to solve for by implementing the Let's Talk tool, and then how did it change throughout the pandemic?
Okay, so before the pandemic hit, Dr. Angie Smith was in my role, and what she needed to figure out was how can she keep her finger on the pulse of the community, those hot topics, and find out what's going on. So she started a partnership with Let's Talk K-12 Insight. And of course, right when they start this and they're getting ready to do the soft launch, the pandemic hits. So during the pandemic, and talking to Dr. Smith, and I was at one of our largest high school too, it was a good thing we had it. So it was a way for us to find out the trending topics, for the community to voice their concerns, and for us to get those concerns in the hands of the experts, right? On the mask debate, when are we going back to school? Who's coming back? When? All these questions. So we were able to control that narrative and get some consistency with our responses going into that pandemic. And now, for us, it's, hey, coming out of the pandemic, we're in the endemic. As we started rolling back, and we were one of the first school systems in Virginia to go back in October. So you got to think from that parent's perspective. They're nervous, our employees are nervous, and we want to make sure that we're answering all their questions. And one way, when you're dealing with the public, is they don't want any backlash sometimes for those questions. So I know Let's Talk uses a hidden customer sometimes, so they could ask that, whether that's an employee or whether that's a parent, grandparent, just a concerned citizen, they can ask that without fear. And then we can make sure that we're getting them a timely answer and that it's consistent across. Again, we are a large school district, so consistency in our answers is big.
Yes, absolutely. Well, so I have a picture of one of the landing pages on your school district website. So what we ended up doing is displacing the traditional contact us that had email addresses and telephone numbers, which happens outside of the system, through the Let's Talk piece. So can you walk us through the Chesapeake landing page right there, and what the student enrollment buttons mean?
Sure. So Hampton Roads, we have one of the largest military, bases on the East Coast. So we have a lot of active duty military, and these are people, they're moving from all over and constantly moving. So that's what we consider, one of the hot topics, that it's always going to come in. We're always going to have families asking questions about transcripts and how those work. So that needed to be on there. Student enrollment, attendance questions, kindergarten, right? We're getting ready, kicking off kindergarten enrollment for school. So we need to make sure that the parents have one-stop shopping. Where can I go and where can I get these answers? And again, it's so the schools aren't inundated. Right now, they're preparing for that school year, so we can get the right answers to the right people. We're having a event coming up August 6th. Pack the Bus, where kids can get vaccination information, enrollment information, kindergarten, and we need to roll that out. So that's another area that we can do that. Also on our homepage, transportation. I'm sure nationwide, everybody is dealing with the bus issue. Shortage of bus drivers. Is my bus going to show up on time? How about if that bus doesn't show up on time? Should my child still wait out at the bus stop? So with us on our transportation, with us being so large, 47 schools, brick and mortar, we broke it up into boroughs. And then we have people in transportation that take each borough and they answer those specific questions on whether, hey, a bus hasn't showed up for a week, bus driver could be out sick, so they can answer those questions to those individuals. Also, within schools, we have high school, we have middle school, we have elementary broken down. Our directors are over those areas, and also their administrative assistant, so that they can help answer any of those questions that are coming up.
Got it. And so for those that are seeing this, as Dr. Vail is describing this again sits on the district or school web page. And the idea is if I have a question about attendance and I click the attendance button, it gets routed internally to the attendance team that sees that question faster, sees it and responds to it. I know that when we did the implementation, we looked at some of the data, right? Dr. Vail said, what are the big buckets of communication that are currently coming in through email or phone calls? And we need to have a better way of triaging them, because going to the office of the superintendent about an attendance issue is not the most appropriate way to get the communication there, right? So
yeah, we started that way. That was student enrollment for us. Student enrollment was before the pandemic. That's, I think, how we kicked off, was we need help with this. And we need parents not just going to the schools, but to our enrollment office and answering those questions on how they can enroll. So absolutely. Or sending the emails to the board members and asking questions that should be directed to that office and department.
Right. So you guys have an internal workflow process that says if something comes in and it's about a student enrollment, it needs to go over to the enrollment team. So let's have this tool layer over the top of that framework and making sure when enrollment questions come in, it gets over to enrollment. But because you're also in a high military area, you also triaged inside of your student enrollment. And these are 6 different examples of questions that could come into enrollment, but get routed to different people depending on the purview of the question, because I have a question about attendance, which maybe go to a different person inside of enrollment that would be handling homeschool or kindergarten. Is that correct?
Correct. So, for example, great point there with our active duty military, our FACE team will take those questions. They're the expert in that area. They know how to answer it. But let's just say one of them might not be available. We have the option of creating templates for some of the more common questions that come up. So someone from my team who oversees this to make sure that, again, we're responding timely, it's an appropriate response, can sometimes use a template if they're not the expert in the area, or they can get the information from that expert and be able to answer the question.
Right. And so you guys also continue to use data to see what the hot topics are and trending pieces. So this is a living, breathing component on your website. I know you mentioned transportation, right? Being a sticky widget as we're going to the back to school season and triaging there. What are some of the other trending topics? I mean, we talked about enrollment, transportation. Are other ones right now that are top of mind as we enter the back to school season?
Okay, I'm going to take one step back before we get back to school. Graduations and celebrations were one of our biggest topics going in, right? We're coming out of the pandemic. Hey, how many tickets do I get to graduation? Do we have to wear a mask? What's it going to look like there? What are your mitigation strategies? So we needed to have that in place. At our elementary level, the parents at the time, they want to get into that building. They want to celebrate with their kids. Are you going to have the end of the year party, fair? How's that working? So we were able to put that up. Now going into the school year is dress code. Our dress code policy has changed. We know it's a hot topic. We have that on there, and we make sure that we get the right person or right team there to answer those questions.
So as things are hitting the system, whether that's email, voicemail, telephone calls, you can see in real time what the trending topics are. You can see how many things are coming in that are related to graduation or dress code. And then so that's also helping you inform then how to get out in front of it. It says, holy cow, we're getting a bunch of things about issue X. We should have a button up here. And if any issue about issue X needs to go over to Angie as an example, right? And you guys do that in real time, correct?
Correct. And we even take it a step further. Well, we talked about our other avenues of communication. So as we're seeing on K-12, dress code's a big issue. I know in my opening newsletter to parents, and to our employees, our peak priorities, then I'm going to have to address that topic in that newsletter. Also on social media, right? We're getting ready to go back to school. We might want to put out some of our new dress code, our new guidelines, so that the parents know that, so that we're using, again, strategically all our avenues of communication, but it's coming back through what we're seeing on Let's Talk.
So have you seen that that's helped give a little context? Then you mentioned earlier kind of the loudest voices in the room, maybe not representative of everybody. So you review data semi-regularly to see the sheer volume and making sure that it's not just the same 8 people that are hitting you up every single time about that issue, but is it more representative of the community, and you can see who's reaching out and what kind of stakeholder they are and how frequently those things are pinging you, correct?
Correct. We can use that data because all of us have been there. You know, my email gets inundated with, you know, that 1 or 2 parents on that same topic. And if the board or my boss, clerk of the board, chief of staff asked me, hey, what's the big topic right now? And I was just to go off my email, I might have 2 or 3 people hitting me up with the book argument right now, you know, on some of the books, and say, hey, that's really big, but hey, that might only be big for 2 or 3 families. Where a dress code on K-12, you know, we're starting to see that, and it could be anonymous, it could be a hitting customer. Again, they don't want the backlash, but we're able to use that data to make informed decisions.
Fantastic. What other do you use any other consideration for hot topics outside of sheer volume? As far as what may make it, you know, onto the platform, as far as buttons?
I can tell you, you know, going to our school board meetings, sometimes if we get a lot of speakers that are signed up on one topic, and we might need to address that and put that topic then on K-12, Let's Talk, and we can start, you know, funneling those questions through there. And again, the reason we want to do that is because we want the expert answering that question. We want it to be a consistent answer, because we do know our public and our parents will play that mom and dad game, you know, where they're going to try to find that answer they want. They go to one person, they come to me, they get one answer, and then let's say they go into another department and they get a little bit different answer than the one they want, then that's going to come back on me. So we want to make sure that it's a consistent message that we're putting out there.
Got it. So there's two data sets that you would use to put topics up or remove topics off of the live page on the website, and it'd be volume of communications that's coming in, of realizing this is a hot topic, or something that either at the board or, you know, that has higher reputational risk, so to speak, or something that's going to be more emotional, or, you know, it's going to be more top of mind, to get that into an environment through here that's more productive than, you know, social media or some other channels that don't have the framework.
Correct. And there's certain things we don't want on social media. We don't want that conversation taking place out on social media, where it's this is a more controlled setting, so that we can have that conversation appropriately.
Awesome. So what are from your purview as being communications, you know, director, and overseeing this kind of implementation as it started, narrow scope, and then, you know, modeled out, what are some of the benefits, like the top 3 benefits that you've seen, you know, in your role, that the system provides to you?
All right. So the first thing I would say, and I think all of us that have been in education or been in business, is, you know, an email, that forward button. And that everybody has a tendency, oh, that's not me, let me forward this to this person, then it gets forwarded again, then it's going to get lost in someone's email. So we're going to have an upset stakeholder, upset parent, they're not getting their question answered. That doesn't happen here, because again, with this, you have a team that's set up to answer this question, and sometimes it does go to the wrong team, and that's, you know, the user clicks the wrong button, and through this we're able to get it in the right hands, and we're able to answer. Secondly, most of us are competitive in nature, and when I've gone to new departments and said, hey, I need to onboard you on Let's Talk, and one of the first things hey, you're going to get a score, and I got to let you know right now, my enrollment team is my top team. You know, they have a 9.8 out of 10 score. And so right now, you know, human resources, they want that top score. Some of them will come by and ask, hey, have you checked on our score? Can you give it, what is that? So there's some motivation behind there to do well, not just represent the district, but to compete against one another when you do these types of things. So there's actual data there to show these departments on how well they're doing. And then vice versa, sometimes it might be, that friendly email reminder. Hey, you're not answering these questions as timely. Is there a way that I can help you? Do we need to look at redoing the dashboard, maybe narrowing that the topic on there a little bit more? Maybe it's too broad so that the parents can hit that. So that assists us that way. And then me in my current position, it gives me the big picture, right? I can pull that data. I can go, I'm going to have informed answers for my bosses. I'm going to have informed answers for school board, superintendent, the cabinet on what we're seeing and how we're responding. And then they're also able to come to me and say, hey, this is what's going to come down. We have a new policy in place. You might want to add this to our Let's Talk platform.
And so let's talk about the data for a second. So the dashboard of analytics, right? So you can go in and see how many parents, reached out to us in this given week. And then of all of the parents that reached out to us, what were the big topics that they were reaching out to us about? How fast was our response? How courteous was our response, right? How many text messages came in from students, and then where were they coming from? So you can see all of that. What other kind of data do you review on daily, weekly, monthly basis in the system?
Who's who's sending in the messages. We look at, are they feeling, you talk about trust. We hope we're getting to the point where it doesn't always have to be a hidden customer, right? And we know who it is, or if it's anonymous. We have had in the past, sometimes we keep on getting the same question or about the same topic, and we're not seeing it from someone else. And they were doing it under, anonymous or hidden customer. We're able to work with Let's Talk and figure out, hey, that's that same person, that one person that was showing up to your board meetings constantly, can't give it up. And we're able to now block it when it gets to the point that it needs to, that we need to ignore that. It's not a hot topic. That data has been useful for us too. And I can tell you, right now, sometimes the questions, that come in there, they're not going to the right spot. And we figured out, like, we need to onboard athletics right now. That needs to be a topic going into fall sports. We need to get our supervisor of athletics on there, and him and his team need to be answering some of these questions.
Got it. So there's the handful of things I want to bring the audience along with. So as far as the hidden customer and anonymous customer, when I click on this button, I send in feedback to Chesapeake Public Schools. An example, I click on attendance because I'm just looking at that one right now. I get a form that says, hey, thanks for reaching out to us. Tell us how we can help you. And at the bottom, it asks for the contact information of the end stakeholder, right? The user that's submitting the piece. So we can close the loop. So as communication comes in, we can either call them back, text them back, email them back. But you guys have also opened up lines of communication because you do want to get feedback. And if people are uncomfortable because they want to give anonymous feedback to you, you're still taking that, and the system is allowing you to either do that as a hidden customer where I don't see the name and telephone number, or completely as anonymous where I don't have any contact information whatsoever. Correct?
Yeah, correct. And I know later in this presentation we're going to talk about one of those instances we've used it that way, where it's an uncomfortable conversation, but we want open and honest answers.
Yeah, you want to open up lines of communication and not have that being a barrier of entry to hear the honest feedback that you get from your stakeholders. So going into this next piece, there's one additional thing that you were talking about as far as competitiveness of your team. So when things are sent into the system and your team, triages it and you see all the pieces, they respond to the customer. The customer then gets the answer from Chesapeake Public Schools. And then there's a follow-up question, one question survey that goes to each of those stakeholders that said, you guys are committed to excellent, high quality customer service, right? Give us a rating. How do we do? Like, did we hit your expectations as a public school system and you having a child in our system, right? So it's a scale of 1 to 10, right? And that's where the competitiveness nature of your different departments are, making sure that they're responding faster than everybody else, and then also making sure that they are providing high level of customer service, correct?
Correct. And sometimes, you don't always get the feedback you want. Take it, with a grain of salt sometimes, especially if you're answering in a timely manner. And some of those things you can laugh about, and then there's others you're proud of, your department for coming through and being, top dog at the moment.
Yeah. And we also, so when in your community, when they also get a chance to rate you, there's also an open field box to give you guys, feedback. And this is some of the ones that we actually pulled from Chesapeake Public Schools. One of my favorites, one in the blue box, it was a timely answer. It may not have been what I wanted to hear, but it was honest, and and I appreciated that, right? Like there's a direct correlation, and that gets back to the Maya Angelou quote. Again, as long as you're courteous and you're quick with your responses, people are more happy, even if they don't like the answer, because they're not waiting around all day for an answer. Have you seen that to be true outside of that one example as well?
Yeah, and again, that comes back to you're avoiding that mom and dad. Hey, I don't like the answer, but hey, it's honest. I know I'm going to get that. Even if they tried another avenue, they're going to get the same answer. So that instead of going through that email route, emailing at a school, emailing a principal, then going to the athletic director, then you're going to an AP. It's the same thing at the district level when we're doing these things. It's going to the right person, and they're going to get the same consistent answer. So.
And probably a faster answer, because it doesn't have to do the email forwarding tree, all the things. Because there's nothing more frustrating as a parent of school age children to send a question in, and I see it get forwarded 7-8 times before I finally get an answer. It's like, what's going on here?
Well, and then that's you setting up your team though too, right? So it's not just a one person dog and pony show that we have with, hey, that's just you. Most of our topics are set within that team. There's somebody that's over that team, and then there's people that are under that are going to help answer those questions.
Awesome. So I want to talk about some specific use cases that you guys have done. Because we talked about the general overall triaging of communication, and something about transportation goes there, food services goes there, safety and security goes here. But you guys also had some additional particular use cases and we talked a little bit about, strategic listening and trust building. So can you walk us through some of the outcomes that you guys used for DEI over this past, 2 years, and some of the outcomes that you had?
Sure. The first you can see on here, it's let's hear it, speak up. And that was dealing with the George Floyd situation. And again, that's where we talk about some of those conversations that can be uncomfortable for individuals to have, and where we needed open and honest answers from our community. When we pitched this out there to the community, let's hear it. The first thing that we wanted to get their feedback about what was going on in our schools and how comfortable everybody felt. We let them know that they might not get a response, to it, but what they're providing us is going to help us with our decision making. In other situations, for some of the things we received, we needed to respond right away. It needed that from what we were hearing from the public. So, we received more than 300 dialogues on that, which I think is a really good turnout. And it helped us move forward and helped us support, the students and the families within our schools so that they feel safe. And it comes back to that honesty part you're talking about, Joe. So that was one of them, dealing with the DEI, making sure that we're addressing all of our needs for all of our students.
So in walking through that particular use case, you allowed to have anonymous feedback, but the expectation was, hey, we're opening up this line of communication. And if you don't want to feel comfortable putting your name on there, we still want to hear from you, and we're going to catalog that information, but we can't get a response because we don't know who you are. But you're level setting with the end stakeholder, whether that's a student, right, that want to give feedback, or parent, or your internal teaching or non-teaching staff. Right? I mean, you guys have a lot of internal customers too that represent the brand of the school system that work for you. So you also level set that expectation to allow whatever people were comfortable with.
Correct. And then we were able to take this information, and Dr. Cotton, our superintendent, was, about twice a month. He was meeting with all administrators in the whole city. So this is a big, huge meeting, but he's able to take this information and share it with the principals and assistant principals in the schools. This is the feedback we're getting. This is what we need to do. He's able to share that information with the school board. We're able to put, new policies in place and address the issues through that. So it's a powerful piece and a powerful tool.
So then let's also talk about switching things completely then to also using it for positive things that are happening within the school system, right? I think when we talk about, engaging in trust building throughout the community, I feel like we in school systems are pretty modest people, right? Like we don't always do a great job sharing of all the great things that we're doing and taking a moment to, highlight and celebrate the good things that are happening. So can you walk us through like building some of the community positive pieces and how you use the system for that?
So, yeah, extremely important. Sometimes we concentrate too much on the negative. We need to concentrate on the positive. So the first thing was, gratitude grams with our colleagues. So we set this up where colleagues could go on there, teachers, custodians, TAs, clerical, and they could send, a message of gratitude in November to one of them. And then our print shop is also part of our communications team. So we'd take this off of K-12 and then we'll come up with, and that was the actual card on there, and we'd send it to that employee, you know, and build in whatever building they were, so they could have a hard copy of it and understand. We also sent them an electronic version of it too off Let's Talk. So it was powerful for us to lift one another up.
And Let's Talk became the vehicle in which to track and get that feedback in a systematic approach to then use to have the print shop send those out to the people that were getting recognized, correct?
Yeah, and then we were also able to take this and we do something in our school board meetings where we do the superintendent spotlight, where we want to highlight good things that are going on within our school division. So we were able to take this and put this in our spotlight too. So again, it's not just one avenue. We use it for a multitude of things. And also in our employee update, we're able to share some of those things. And even with our parents, you know, what some colleagues might be saying about one another with what's going on.
Cool. And then principal praise, similar framework, or is it different?
Similar, but this is something that we pushed out to the whole community, you know, where you could have parents, you could have students, and you could have peers give principal praise for the things that they're doing in their school, the leadership that, you know, people are seeing. So we were able to share that. We were able to share some of those quotes and what's coming in on our social media. And then also to help pick up those principals during those difficult times. You know, they work really hard leading a building, and sometimes they get beaten down from all different angles. So we want to make sure, you know, the hard work that they're doing, they're get appreciated for it.
Awesome. So then we're getting to the end of this presentation. We can open it up for some Q&A. One of the questions that I have that we haven't touched yet on, Dr. Vail, is how have you used, and you had a handful of examples that we just went through DEI and some, you know, the positive grams. Are there other issues that you've used Let's Talk proactively to address that could impact the school division's reputation, or issues that may be, you know, not trending yet, but you're trying to get in front of?
So we were, you know, virtual our academy. We just opened this up. Okay. So and that elementary, we had it in our secondary level, and it's where we're running a virtual academy. So that's going to be one of those things that we're going to receive questions for, and we know on it, you know, parents that put their child in it, can they pull their child out? Parents that get in there as we're moving towards this endemic, as problems arise, you know, do they want to pull their child out? So we need to have answers. We need to prepare those ahead of time, but we need to get that on there so we're prepared. So again, it's looking into the future a little bit in that crystal ball, and trying to take you know, some of that workload off the schools. That's what, when I meet with the schools and we're getting ready to do our general conference where we meet with all administrators and our school personnel, it's, you know, in the communications department, I want to make their job as easy as I can. So if I can set up something so that they're not having to answer all these email questions, phone calls, things like that, so that they can concentrate on the kids in school and the task at hand of educating those kids, it's something that we're willing to do. So
got it. So by helping reduce some of the volume that they're getting through normal channels, by funneling it through this, then opens up their human capital and their time to be able to do the work of actually educating kids each and every day in the buildings.
Yep, it frees it up, you know, that they're not on the phone or answering all these emails from parents, that, you know, that we're getting those questions in the right hands and moving it along. So they need that time.
Awesome. All right. So got a handful of questions that are coming in. First one, why did you end up choosing Let's Talk over some other platforms? Or what was about the system that you guys, that intrigued you the most since implementing it in Chesapeake?
I think we knew we needed two-way communication. And what was probably going to be the easiest way launch for us to get this out. You know, how can we launch this? How can this work? Plus, our superintendent had launched it in Henry County, which is a much smaller school district, and they did it with success, very rural. So when he came here and he spoke with Dr. Smith, he thought, you know, hey, this can work on a much larger scale. You know, and so he was the person, and again, it comes back to him winning the award at NSPRA with the innovation in communication technology, that this is a tool that can work for us. And again, here in Chesapeake, we're gradually moving where we want to go. We want to be able to take this tool. We want it in the schools. We want to start piloting that, but I need to make sure that all my departments here, that they're using it appropriately, the way that it should be, that our scores and our ratings are where they need to be before we start pushing it out of the central office level into the schools. I don't want to add one more thing onto the schools right now without it being efficient. But it's an easy transition, and the support is there. I got to say that that we can get a training. I can send in and ask a training almost for any time, and they'll come back and say, hey, do you want it for 30 minutes? Do you want it for an hour? What do you need? And they specialize that training to the people that I have in the room.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm happy to hear that. Another question: how do you incorporate Let's Talk into your daily workflow?
Okay, so that's a good question right there. So for me, it's meeting with the people on my team that are in charge of different parts of like Let's Talk. Whether that's a 15-minute stand up meeting with them in the morning as we're talking on what's going on. My supervisor of public relations, he supervises the whole big picture of Let's Talk, and what he does is he will come into my office or shoot me an email, especially if things might pop up on there and go, hey, Chris, I really need you to take a look at this. Or, hey, this is going to be a hot topic. We got this coming in. They do that. Also, it's allowed our administrative assistants in different departments, as we give them templates, to help answer some of the questions that fall within their department. And again, it gives me the big picture of what's going on. I can look at it. I can hop on there at any point. It's easy to see. I can see all the dialogues that are on there, if they've been answered or not. So it's something that I can start my day off with if I want. But I usually, before I leave my office, I'll put Let's Talk on, make sure the dialogues that we're answering what we need to, and then leave the office.
Got it. So there's different checks and balances that you have throughout the day to make sure that you're using the data and that everything is being handled appropriately. All right, so we're almost at time. I appreciate Dr. Vail, you being here for this conversation. I want to thank everyone that joined. The last question that came in, and then we will end up, we'll wrap, is we talked about a lot of different things inside the system. Just out of curiosity, what is your favorite feature inside the system and why?
All right, favorite feature inside the system. I would probably say it's easy to navigate and to onboard people. So what you're going to find out as you take your baby steps and you get this kicked off, you're going to be like, oh, I need to onboard this person, or I need to onboard, and then you got to get them trained. And it's simple. It's not difficult. It's very easy to do, is to get somebody on there and get them trained and up and running. So if you onboard them in one day, you can probably have them trained and up and going within 3 days. They're good to go and start answering questions. So I've enjoyed that aspect of it, in your personal settings, being able to do that.
Well, I'm happy to hear it. I'm glad that it's easy to use, because if it's not easy to use, I mean, the landscape is littered with implementations that have not gone well, right? It needs to be, there's enough that you guys are doing. It has to be simple to use.
And it's that user-friendly aspect. We all know there's templates and there's systems that we use that can be a little more complicated, and it gets the updates, and it's pretty it's simple to use. So
good. Well, I'm happy to hear that. Well, that does it for our time. Thank you so much, Dr. Vail, for the conversation today. I hope everybody enjoyed the conversation. And thank you so much for coming out for our webinar. If you have any questions or more details about the work that we do, feel free to check us out online, k12insight.com. My contact information is here. And hope everybody enjoys the rest of their summer vacation, whether that's 1 more week or 6 more weeks. And best of luck as we go back to the school season. So thank you so much, everyone.
All right, thanks. Have a great day.